Have you ever wondered why a really smart candidate, someone who clearly knows their stuff, walks out of a SQL interview and just doesn't get the offer? Well, today, we're going to break down those common sneaky mistakes, and here's a hint. It's not about memorizing syntax. It's about something much deeper. Let's dive in.
So yeah, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? You can grind away for weeks, you can memorize every function under the sun, and still, you can get completely stumped. The answer, though, is actually pretty simple, and it's not what most people think to study for.
And there you have it. This is the whole game right here. An interview isn't a pop quiz on commands. It's a test to see if you have a mental map of how the database thinks. They want to know if you get the behavior that's happening behind the scenes when you run your code. Let's see what that really looks like.
All right, our first big category of mistakes all boils down to filtering. I know it sounds super basic, right? But this is where a ton of candidates trip up because they don't quite grasp when and how SQL decides to filter your data.
This right here, this is probably the #1 reason people get a no thanks. On the left, you see a candidate trying to filter on an aggregate, that count, using a where clause. It kind of feels like it should work, but nope, it's totally wrong. The correct way, on the right, is to use having. So why is that?
And this slide is the key to everything. See, SQL doesn't execute in the order you write it. Logically, the database first figures out the tables. Then, and this is the important part, it filters individual rows with where. It's only after that step that it groups everything up. By the time where does its job, that count you're trying to filter on, it doesn't even exist.
So here's the golden rule you gotta burn into your brain. Where is for rows before they get grouped. Having is for groups after they've already been formed and counted up. If you remember that, you're golden. It's that fundamental. Oh, and here's another really subtle filtering trap. So a candidate uses a left join because they want to get all the customers, right? Even the ones who haven't placed an order. But then they slap a where clause on the orders table and suddenly, poof, all the customers without orders just vanish. Their left join has secretly turned into an inner join. It's a classic mistake. And again, it all comes down to behavior. Here's what's happening under the hood. The join runs first, and it creates all those nice rows with nulls for customers who have no orders. But then, the where clause comes along like a bouncer at a club and kicks out any row where the amount isn't over 100. And that includes all those nulls you wanted to keep. Understanding that order is absolutely critical.
Okay, let's move on to our second theme, which builds directly on the first one, aggregation. We're talking about more than just knowing count or sum. It's about knowing precisely what you're counting and how those functions interact with the structure of your data.
This is such a classic. An interviewer asks, what's the difference between count asterisk and count column? A nervous candidate might say, they both count rows, and that is an instant red flag. As you can see here, count asterisk counts every single row, no questions asked. But count salary, that's different. It only counts the rows where that salary column actually has a value.
So the bottom line is simple, but so important. Count column ignores nulls. This isn't just a trivia question. It's a test to see if you get how SQL deals with missing data. And let me tell you, dealing with missing data is a massive part of any real-world data job.
Now, let's talk about a real trap. You see this query here? A candidate might run this on their old version of MySQL, and it'll actually work. They might even say in an interview, well, it runs on my machine. And that is the worst possible answer, because this is invalid in standard SQL. And here's why. There is a fundamental rule for group by. Any column you put in your select list has to be one of two things. Either it's in the group by clause itself, or it's wrapped in an aggregate function like count or max. In that last query, the name column was neither. The database basically throws its hands up and says, hey, you grouped by department, which one of the many names in that department do you want me to show you?
Okay, for our final section, let's talk about the thing that truly separates the senior candidates from the juniors, performance. Look, anyone can write a query that eventually gets the right answer, but can you write one that works efficiently when you're dealing with millions of rows? That's the real test. Here's a simple sounding question. What's the difference between union and union all? They both stitch data sets together, but union does a whole lot of extra work behind the scenes. It has to sort all the results and then meticulously check for and remove any duplicate rows. Union all, on the other hand, just smashes the two datasets together, duplicates and all.
And that is the real kicker. Speed. If you know for a fact your datasets don't have duplicates, or you simply don't care if they show up, using NULL is a massive performance win. It shows the interviewer you're not just thinking about getting the right answer, you're thinking about getting it efficiently.
Here's another great face-off: delete versus truncate. A weak answer is they both get rid of data. A strong answer is what you see on this slide. Delete is a careful row-by-row operation that you can roll back if you make a mistake. Truncate is a wrecking ball. It's a bulk operation that's way faster, but you can't undo it. This isn't a syntax question, it's a test of whether you understand how database transactions actually work.
And now for the killer question. An interviewer might ask, should we add an index to this column to speed it up? A junior candidate will immediately say, yes, it makes reads faster. But a senior candidate knows there's a trade-off. Yes, your reads get a lot faster, but every single write operation, every insert, update, and delete now gets slower.
You have to remember that an index isn't free magic. It's a totally separate data structure that the database has to maintain. Think of it like the index in the back of a textbook. It helps you find things fast, but every time the author adds a new page, they have to go back and update the index too. That takes work. Recognizing that trade-off is a huge sign of experience. So, as we start to wrap this all up, let's bring it all back to the main point. This isn't about trying to memorize dozens of obscure functions. It's about understanding a few core principles that explain why SQL behaves the way it does.
Seriously, if you can just master these 3 things, you are 90% of the way to acing any SQL interview. First, know the logical order of operations. Second, know exactly how nulls get treated. And third, always think about the performance trade-offs of every decision you make. Everything else builds on this foundation.
And we'll end right where we started. The interview isn't the real game. The real game is the job itself, working on huge, complex systems. Interviewers are just trying to find people who understand the behavior of those systems. So, stop memorizing syntax and start focusing on the why. If you can do that, you'll be in great shape, and those job offers will start rolling in.